Ship refuelling is fast growing in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, despite numerous objections from marine conservationists and tourism experts who are afraid that in the event of an oil spill, there will be a major environmental catastrophe. Let's get the very latest what this all means. Lerato Fekisi is on the story for us, and she brings us the very latest.
We're broadcasting live at sea. What a beautiful experience, just to see exactly what bunkering is all about. Bunkering, as you said earlier on, is the transfer of fuel from one vessel to the other. And I'm going to allow my cameraman, Gilbani Blom, just to turn around and show you exactly how the process works, and also allow the CEO of SABC, Mr. Sobantu Delay, to take us briefly through exactly what bunkering is, more than anything, to take us through the process you guys see on screen right now. Let's go straight to it, Mr. Delay. What we see right now are two vessels. To us, we just see cords and strings, but what exactly is happening right now in our shot?
Well, the two ships are transferring fuel to each other for bunkering, for fueling purposes. As you can see, that the Tilos is the ship that's giving the fuel to the one that's receiving it, the Monrovia. The pipe that is connecting the two ships, that is the bunkering hose. And you would notice that between the two ships, you've got two fenders, those rubber big fenders. That is to prevent the ships from colliding with each other. And as you can see, the one is moving quite violently. It's a smaller ship, quite lighter, so it bobs up and down in the waters. But the most important thing from an environmental control point of view, you'll notice that there is a boom around the stern or the back of the ship, and that boom is to prevent any oil that might escape between during the transfer process. Then it gets trapped between the two ships, and as an emergency response in the port, we've got standby boats that will then come suck up all the oil that is trapped on the water. As you would know, oil floats on water. So it is an opportunity that we do a lot of training, we do a lot of trade, we do a lot of capacity building. But that's essentially what is now happening. As you can see, on the big ship, it's rule, it's international law, that whenever you're receiving fuel, they need to be on standby, they need to watch the tanks, they need to make sure that nothing overflows, as well as on the pumping vessel. So it is a regulated operation.
Earlier on, we spoke about the economic spin-offs of bunkering. You said that there are ships that come from overseas, obviously growing our market as well. How often is the bunkering taking place, and in terms of economic spin-offs, what does it have for this area?
Well, I can tell you that today we've got 22 ships in the bay, and each one of them is waiting. There are 10. We've got 6 bunkering barges, and these ships, as I was saying, they would have come from wherever they came to wherever they're going, but they stop here. Once they stop here, they need fuel, and like any other ultra station, they stop, they need provisions, they need to change crew, they need repairs, and we estimate that there's no less than about 2.5 million rand over and above the bunkering that gets left in the economy. And that money then goes to all the small businesses, the SMMEs, the launch operators, the ship chandlers and others that live off the opportunity.
We also spoke about the fact that now you're putting regulations in place, working with the environmentalists to try and control how we manage the oceans, to make sure that also preserve the marine life as well. How far are you with those processes?
Well, the regulations are there. What we're needing to fine-tune them, because you have to work on the limits of the weather, on the limits of all the other considerations. When do you stop the operation? And once the sea picks up, and as you can see, it's quite clear today, it's calm, so it's beautiful, you can see, but you can see the ship still bobbing in and out of the water. So we need to establish those limits. At what stage do you now say, cut, you can't operate? We've put restrictions on nighttime operations. You can't, we don't do this operation at night. Reason being that you won't see the fuel that's escaping, even though you've got lights. The crew transfers, you don't do it at night. The size of the ships coming in, we limit that to about 90,000 tons gross tonnage. So it will be, I think the the top end of the ships that we will take is a ship around 300 meters, nothing longer. And the reason is that if there should be any emergency, if that ship starts losing its engines and dragging anchor, we want to be able to pull it into the port where we can control it. So you don't take any ships that you can't already accommodate in the port should a need arise. And these are all the measures that we've taken in place, and we continue to fine-tune the opportunity to make sure that whilst we realize the economic benefit, we don't spoil the environment and we don't go over the risk that we think we can take.
Last, Mr. Lai, how long would this process take? Like you said, obviously there are other vessels waiting in line also to refuel. How long does the specific process take to refuel the vessels?
Well, it depends how much fuel you're taking. We're taking, I think a ship typically takes about 600 tons of fuel, and that would take a few hours. We do not pump overnight. So what happened last night, they started pumping, but then it became dark, so they had to disconnect and come back this morning and connect. So it's all those variables. And if the weather is rough, you reduce your pumping speed so that you don't have a lot of pressure on the hose. So it's a whole lot of considerations that we look at. But typically, a ship will be here for a day or so to take fuel and do all the work that it needs to be done, much like what happens at the airports.
That was Mr. Sobando Delai from SAMSA, the CEO, just speaking to us about the bunkering, explaining to us what it is, saying that obviously there are regulations already in place to make sure that as the specific sector tries to create jobs, as they try to exploit the economic benefits of the ocean, they also preserve this jewel for future generations. But for now, let's go back to you in studio.